Yeah, so about, gosh, what was it now? 5-ish months ago, 6 months ago, Kyle, Brian approached us about getting together and basically reinvigorating the Playmakers brand. And so we claim zero credit for the idea of Playmakers, the execution of it. That is all Brian. It's been around since 2009. What I think we can claim a little bit of credit for is designing a pretty awesome website, and trying to go out and prospect people to change the face of youth basketball development, in this country and really throughout the world. I think for a long time, the US has relied on having just more athletic players. And really, like, obviously the invention of the game and all of those things, but you see that the player development that is happening now across the world supersedes, I think, and feel free to disagree here, supersedes, I think, the majority of player development within the US. And so Brian has been a long time advocate of more of a long-term athletic development model, small-sided games, using 3-on-3 as the vehicle to teach basketball in this country. And so using the Playmakers League framework, and without going into too many of the nitty-gritty of what actually exists, we have 3 different curricula that people can purchase and become operators of a league. And we would consider a league to be 32 kids. That's kind of the baseline for a full league of 32 kids. And we have a full curriculum for ages 5, really 5 and up, of how to develop not just basketball decision making and basketball skill, but overall athleticism, overall coordination, overall ability to play with others. And so, we have people all over the country that are going to start using this as, their spring and summer league, as their feeder systems, as, a complement to what they're doing right now. So when you talk about even like the implications or the applications of youth basketball development through 3-on-3 and small-sided games to a middle school, high school, or even college program, those applications are limitless. Right, we can take that same curriculum and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you just use this as your practice plan? See what happens. Now, yes, we don't want to replace 5-on-5. Right, 3-on-3 is not going to replace 5-on-5. It's going to augment the development for 5-on-5. And ultimately, with 3-on-3 also being an Olympic sport, there are now pathways for really, really good 3-on-3 players to go play at a very high level. And so being able to sort of capitalize on all of those things and really create an environment where players are getting an opportunity to have the most possible time on task, right? Obviously, the most possible time on task would be playing one-on-one. Playing one-on-one is also like, there's only certain things you can do one-on-one until you need to involve more players. And so being able to reduce some of that complexity, to be able to reduce some of that interference and really help players just develop a love for the game and the ability to play the game well, that's sort of the overall guiding force behind Playmakers. And even for myself as a college coach, like, I see applications for this to replace AAU at some point. I would rather go to an event where I'm going to watch the kids I want to watch play that are on my recruiting list. I want to watch them play 3-on-3, where they can't hide in a zone defense, right? Where they have to actually make a decision because they're going to touch the ball, where they have to actually defend somebody one-on-one, be in help, and then close out and be ready to play. All of those things replace the current model of what we all lament about AAU, but there's no like viable other option. This becomes the viable other option. And so we'll be, rolling that out here pretty soon as an opportunity for high school players to come and learn and then play. And we can see them actually develop in a very short amount of time.
I want to touch on something Aseem said. He mentioned environment. So taking that and going back to our pyramid, that third tier, the practice design and the environment. Like, we are all products of our environment. So again, it's like if we're not learning the way we want to, again, it's not necessarily the content itself, or that, I'm not enough of a SME of my subject matter to understand what's going on. It's chances are we need to tweak the environment that our kids are in. And that's something that I have greatly evolved in education over my 13 years in the classroom. As I went from a very like sage on the stage, I have to show the kids what all I know. I'm going to stand up here and pontificate. and tell you every single intricate detail that I can about photosynthesis, because it makes me sound really smart when I get to talk about it. But it goes right over the kids' heads. They don't learn anything, and I feel better about it, but they didn't learn. A few of them soak up something here and there, but they're going to forget about it right after the test. Whereas now, like, I don't do a whole lot in my class. I do a lot, but I don't do a whole lot. It's the kids that are doing most of the work. We create this environment to where they're coming up with an idea, and then they get to write on a sticky note and come up to the board and put it up there. So they're a little bit more like kinesthetically involved with what we're doing, and so on and so forth. So what Brian has been able to do through, again, not our credit, his genius, is create this environment in which kids can not only develop, but develop faster, because they're spending more time on task. And again, we won't get into necessarily these details, but we have different rules to how we would even play a game. So I think what you're going to see on the heels of the big three in the Olympics is like 3-on-3 is picking up some momentum, which is great. Like, I think it's better than not doing it. And we talk a lot about good, better, best. So like, it's good to play. It's better to play 3-on-3, but it's best to play 3-on-3 with a developmental model in mind. And what you're going to end up seeing is a lot of coaches around the country are going to buy into this idea of 3-on-3. They're going to print off a poster. They're going to slap a FIBA logo on it and be like, hey, come play 3-on-3. And ultimately what you get is a shitty 3-on-3 pickup instead of shitty 5-on-5 pickup. And which we could argue is better than 5-on-5, right? Because they're still getting this and that, and they're getting more touches and reps and space and whatever. But there's also a better way of doing it. There's that sort of, again, what we would consider the best way to do it. So we're developing through the idea of 3-on-3, but it's not just, hey, let's sign kids up, give them a t-shirt, put them in teams of 4 and let them play 3-on-3. This goes a lot deeper than that. And honestly, as a coach, you develop, because you're figuring out how to run your practice better, what is most beneficial to those kids. And so sort of the idea of Brian wanting to change the way we develop youth in the country, Aseem and I wanted to change the way we develop coaches in this country. That's where that natural marriage sort of comes in. And that partnership was very easy. It was very fluid, because we can't give our kids and our players and our students a better experience if we can't reach the adults first, because they're the ones that are typically ultimately responsible for what type of environment that they're in. And so it's our hope that we're able to mesh these two things, and that we tweak the way that the adults are doing things and kind of what they're setting up, and kind of get out of their way in a lot of respects, is to allow these players to be a little bit more of their natural selves, and to learn and do and fail and make mistakes, and use the environment more as the teaching tool than, say, the X's and O's, the content, the textbook, that kind of thing. And if you teach, or you're in education, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, we have to teach to the test, right? Like, we're all sort of, us as teachers are assessed on whether or not our kids pass their end of year exam or whatever. And we spend all this time teaching to the test, but we don't learn anything. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is flip that on its head and say, look, we're not trying to teach to the test a 5-on-5. We're trying to actually have you learn how to play basketball. And one of the things that I think we can be pretty certain of is, if our essential coaching members, if any of their players went to another essential coaching members program, their kids would be able to just seamlessly fit in and play, because they're viewing things through more of that essential element model, the sprinting, the spacing. It's not so much what we're doing, it's that they've learned how to play. So one of our